Ivy Maria. Welcome to the Rosary Team Podcast.
It's wonderful to be here.
Today we are embarking on a journey that takes us back over 1,600 years. We're going to a windswept mountain in Syria to talk about a man who decided that the best way to find God was to remove, well, literally every barrier between them. We were talking about Saint Maron.
Saint Maron is such a fascinating figure. He's a saint who, he didn't write books, not that we've found anyway. He didn't hold a high office in the hierarchy.
Right.
And yet he's the father of this spiritual movement that has survived empires, persecutions, and, well, the test of time to become a global church, millions strong today.
That's the hook right there.
Yeah.
I mean, how does a 4th century hermit who lived on a mountaintop with no roof over his head, which we are absolutely going to get into because that is wild, how does he inspire a church that's so vibrant?
It's a huge question of legacy. And to understand it, we've gone through, well, a stack of Maronite sources. We've looked at historical records from St. Elias Maronite Church, liturgical texts.
And a really insightful transcript from Father Dominique Hanna.
Yes, the rector of the Maronite Cathedral in Brooklyn. His insights were fantastic.
So our mission today is to uncover what the sources call the philosophy of the open-air life. We want to see how those ancient roots of Antioch connect to you, the modern believer listening to this right now.
Okay, so let's set the scene.
Let's do it. Where are we? When are we?
We're in the late 4th and early 5th centuries. So think, died around 410 AD. We're in Syria, specifically a region called Cedars, which is near the ancient city of Antioch.
Which was a major hub of Christianity at the time.
A huge hub. But Maron, he steps away from all that. He goes up to a mountain source. I would call it Mount Cyrus, sometimes Mount Nepo.
And this is where we find that first detail that it really made me stop and think. When I picture a hermit, I picture a guy in a cave.
Or a little hut, maybe.
Exactly. But the sources are so specific. Saint Maron was an open-air hermit.
That's right. He actually found a pagan temple on this mountain, and he consecrated it to God, turning it into a church. But he didn't live in it.
He lived outside.
Completely outside, exposed to all the elements.
So sun, rain, snow, hail. He's just out there, in it.
He is just out there. And you have to ask, why? It wasn't just because he liked camping.
I'm guessing not.
No, there was a profound spiritual reasoning here, which we find in the texts. Maron wanted nothing, absolutely nothing, between him and God. No roof, no walls. It was a physical manifestation of total vulnerability.
Wow. Total openness to the Creator.
Uh-huh.
It's like he didn't separate the physical world from the spiritual one. He was using the physical cold or the heat to deepen his focus.
Exactly. Theodoret, who was the bishop of Cyrus and wrote about Maron shortly after his death, he described this philosophy of the open-air life. It wasn't about punishing the body for the sake of punishment. It was about liberation. It was about training the soul to be so focused on the divine that the physical discomforts Josessicate, they became secondary.
I think that's such an important distinction. A lot of people hear asceticism and they just think, oh, that's about hating the world or hating your body. But for Maron, the open air was about connection.
Yes, not just rejection. It was about removing the ceiling. I mean, think about how often we put a ceiling on our own spiritual lives, our comfort, our routines, our distractions. Maron literally removed the ceiling. He wanted a direct line of sight.
And even his name reflects this, doesn't it? The sources mention the meaning of Maron.
They do. In the Syriac language, the name is Moro. It's a diminutive form of Lord or Master, so it translates to something like Little Master or Little Lord.
Little Master. That sounds like a contradiction for a guy who started this massive movement.
But it gets right to the heart of his spirituality. It's about littleness, meekness, humility. He wasn't trying to be a giant of the faith in an ego-driven way.
He tried to be small before God.
Exactly. In a world obsessed with Roman status, ecclesiastical status, he chose to be little.
But, and here's the paradox, by trying to be small and isolated, he became famous. He couldn't actually stay away from people.
That is so often the way with true holiness, isn't it? It attracts. Despite his isolation on that mountain, the sources tell us that crowds just flocked to him. For healing, for both physical ailments and for spiritual ones. The texts say he was counseling lost souls.
And it wasn't just local people who knew about him. He was famous in his own time. We have proof from a sort of celebrity of the ancient church.
Saint John Chrysostom.
A massive figure in church history. And he knew who Maron was.
He did. Around the year 405 AD, while John Chrysostom was in exile, he wrote a letter to Maron. He expressed this great love and respect for him, and significantly, he asked Maron for his prayers.
When you have the golden-mouthed preacher of Constantinople asking a hermit on a mountain for prayers,
You know that hermit is the real deal.
it really solidifies his reputation. It wasn't just, local folklore. Now, I want to pivot a bit to the imagery because the sources get very poetic here. The liturgy constantly refers to two trees, the cedar and the palm.
These are absolutely central metaphors in the Maronite tradition. You hear it in the hymns. The righteous shall flourish like a palm tree and grow like a cedar of Lebanon.
Okay, let's unpack those. Why the palm? What's that about?
Well, the palm tree symbolizes a lot of things. Righteousness, hope, peace, victory. But think about a palm tree. It stays green all year round.
Ah, okay.
In the context of the saints, that evergreen nature symbolizes eternal life. It's a sign that the spirit is alive even when the conditions are harsh. The desert can be dry, the sun can be hot, but the palm stays green.
So it's a victory over the environment?
A victory over the environment and a victory over death itself. It's a symbol of the saint who lives in God.
And the cedar. The cedar's on the Lebanese flag is this huge national symbol. But what's the spiritual meaning?
The Cedar of Lebanon symbolizes resilience. These trees, they grow on rocky slopes. They have these incredibly deep roots to hold on during storms, and they grow strong against tough weather. Saint Maron is compared to the cedar because his faith had those same deep roots.
He was on that mountain, battered by the winds, but he didn't break.
Deep roots on rocky slopes.
It feels like such a relevant image for anyone going through a tough time. You don't need perfect soil. You just need deep roots.
Exactly. And that resilience is a perfect segue to a concept Father Hannah brought up. He talks about the two tyrants. This really struck me.
Oh, I love this part. It felt like a psychological diagnosis from the 4th century. Break it down for us.
It's a brilliant framework. So Father Hannah says the hermit, and really every Christian faces two tyrants. First, there's the outside tyrant.
Which would be like Pharaoh in the Bible.
Exactly. Or, persecution, external difficulties, the harshness of the world. For us today, the outside tyrant might be a difficult boss, a health crisis, financial stress. It's the thing happening to you.
But then there's the inside tyrant.
The one inside our own heads.
That's the scary one.
It is the internal passions, temptations, the ego. The inside tyrant is often so much harder to defeat. And Father Hannah explains that Saint Maron's fasting, his vigils, his open-air life, these were his weapons to defeat that inner tyrant.
It's about discipline. It's not about punishing the body. It's about silencing the ego so you can hear God.
It's about dying to the ego. The liturgy for his feast uses the image of the grain of wheat. Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain.
But if it dies, it bears much fruit.
Right. Maron died to his comfort, his ego, and because of that, he flourished.
Talking about this specific heritage, the cedars, the saints, this beautiful imagery, it really makes you want to have a reminder of it in your daily life. It's one thing to hear about it, but it's another to see it. And that is actually a great reason to pause for a second. If you're listening to this and thinking, I would love to have a piece of this spiritual heritage in my home, you really need to check out rosaryteam.com.
They do have some beautiful items that connect directly to what we're talking about.
They really do. They have these lovely Maronite icons. And what's cool is they offer them in different materials. The sources mention brushed aluminum prints, if you want a more modern look, or the classic wood plaque icons.
And icons are such an important part of the Eastern tradition. They aren't just decorations, they're windows into the spiritual reality.
Absolutely. At rosaryteam.com, you can find icons of Saint Maron himself, obviously, but also Saint Charbel, who the site calls the brilliant gem of sanctity, and Our Lady of Elijah. It's a great way to bring that cedar resilience into your own home. So head over to rosaryteam.com and acquire these holy reminders.
It's a wonderful way to keep the saints close.
Now, getting back to the history, we had this hermit, Saint Maron, who dies around 410 AD. Usually when a hermit dies, well, that's the end of the story.
Or maybe a local shrine pops up, yeah.
Right. But here, something very unique happens. You pointed this out earlier, but it's worth repeating. The Maronite Church is the only Catholic church named after a person.
A hermit, no less. Not a city like Rome or a region.
That's a great trivia fact. It's not the Church of Antioch, technically. It's the Maronite Church.
And that speaks to the personal nature of this movement. Maron didn't set out to start a church. He didn't write a constitution. But after his death, his disciples, men like Abraham of Cyrus, who was known as the Apostle of Lebanon, they took his way of life and they moved.
Geographically.
Yes. They moved from Syria into the mountains of Lebanon. They were escaping persecution, but they were also on a mission. And that's where the Maronite identity really forged its bond with the land of the Cedars.
They became a mountain people.
Yeah.
And part of that identity is the liturgy. I was reading about the language used, and it just gave me chills.
It's profound. The Maronite liturgy uses Syriac and Aramaic. This is the language that Jesus spoke.
Wow.
When a Maronite priest celebrates the consecration, he is using words that are phonetically linked to the very words Christ spoke at the Last Supper.
That connection to the roots is so powerful. And there was a theological concept you mentioned that Father Hannah talked about. He called the liturgy the bridge.
Yes. He said the divine liturgy is the bridge where God's finger touches Adam's finger.
Like the Michelangelo painting in the Sistine Chapel.
Exactly like that. You know that tiny gap between their fingers? The liturgy closes that gap. It unites our humanity with his divinity.
There's also a specific gesture in the divine liturgy that the source is highlighted, right? With the Eucharist.
It's very symbolic. During the consecration, the priest touches the four ends of the host, and he also inclines the chalice toward the four cardinal directions.
North, south, east, west.
To symbolize that this sacrifice, this Eucharist, is a universal gift. It's for the whole world. It's a beautiful reminder that even though this church started on a remote mountain, its message is for everyone.
Now, we do have to address the elephant in the room with early church history. There were a lot of arguments, a lot of heresies. Where did the Maronites stand on all that?
The sources are very clear on this. The Maronites have always held fast to the Catholic faith and communion with Rome, with the Pope. This goes back to the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD.
Okay, remind us. That was the council that defined what exactly?
It defined that Christ is both fully God and fully man. Two natures in one person. The Maronites defended this truth even when it was dangerous.
Dangerous how?
In the year 517 AD, 350 Maronite monks were martyred. They were killed because they refused to back down from this belief.
350 monks.
It was a massive loss, but it cemented their identity as defenders of the faith. They were isolated in the mountains, surrounded by different beliefs, but they maintained that link to the universal church.
It really circles back to that Cedar of Lebanon imagery, doesn't it?
Deep roots on rocky slopes. You don't survive 1,600 years in that region without them. They held on to the truth like the cedar holds on to the mountain.
So let's bring this up to today. The Feast of Saint Maron is celebrated on February 9th, and the sources mention a plenary indulgence. Now, I need you to put on your theologian hat for a second. What does that actually mean? Because some people hear indulgence and they think,
a magic ticket.
right, a get-out-of-jail-free card.
It's definitely not magic. An indulgence is the remission of the temporal punishment due to sin. But the requirements are strict and very spiritual. You need a sacramental confession. You need to receive Holy Communion, pray for the Pope, and this is the hardest part. Have a sincere intention to detach from all sin.
Even the small ones.
Even the small ones. It's an invitation to a deep, radical conversion, not just a transaction. It's about aligning your heart completely with God, which brings us right back to Saint Maron on his mountain.
Which leads to my favorite takeaway from Father Hannah. He said each Maronite has a little hermit or monk in him or her.
I love that concept, the inner monk.
It sounds like a self-help book, but it's so deeper than that. What does he mean?
He means you don't have to move to a snowy mountain peak to follow Saint Maron. The mountain is internal. It's about cultivating that interior silence, that little garden of faith within your own heart, whether you're in a busy office, raising a loud family,
Or stuck in traffic.
It's about fighting the inside tyrant right where you are. Saint Maron created a garden on a rocky hill. We're called to create a garden of faith in the rocky soil of the modern world.
It's about clearing away the roof, the distractions, the noise, so there's nothing between you and God.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the noise, maybe the solution isn't just a vacation. Maybe it's tapping into that inner Maronite hermit.
Finding the open air of the soul.
I love that. The open air of the soul.
Before we let you go to, start building that internal garden, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We talked about Maron removing the roof to see God clearly.
And here's a question for you. In a world of constant noise and constant walls we build around ourselves, what would it look like for you this week to remove just one section of that roof? What's one barrier between you and God that you could tear down?
Is it the phone? Is it the need to be right? Is it just the noise? It's something to think about. And hey, if you need a visual aid to help you focus on that goal, Don't forget to visit rosaryteam.com.
Yes, go check out those icons of Saint Maron and Saint Charbel. They're wonderful reminders to nurture that inner monk.
Thank you for listening to the Rosary Team Podcast.